On this day, December 17th, 1663, one of Africa's greatest rulers passed into history. In the heart of Central Africa, a light that had burned defiantly for over 80 years was finally extinguished. This wasn't just the end of a long life. It was the closing of a chapter written in courage, strategy, and an unbreakable will to be free. The woman was Nzinga Mbande, queen of Ndongo and Matamba. Her name echoes through the centuries, a symbol of resistance against the crushing tide of colonialism. But why does her story, a story from 400 years ago, matter so much today? It matters because it's a story of leadership when the world was on fire. It's a story of a brilliant diplomat who could outwit Europe's most powerful men. And it's a story of a warrior who fought not just for a throne, but for the very soul of her people. To understand Nzinga, we must first understand the world that made her. We journey back to a time before the ships arrived, to the vibrant and complex kingdom of Ndongo. Imagine a thriving society nestled in what is now modern-day Angola. This was the world of the Mbundu people, the world of Ndongo. It wasn't a primitive backwater as European accounts would later claim. It was a sophisticated kingdom with intricate political structures, bustling trade networks, and a deep spiritual life. At its head was the ruler, Ndongo. This title, Ndongo, was so significant that it would eventually give the entire region its modern name, Angola. Ndongo wasn't an absolute dictator. Power was a delicate balance, shared among a council of powerful nobles and territorial chiefs. Society was organized around lineage, with strong family bonds forming the bedrock of the community. Their economy was diverse and resilient. Mbundu farmers cultivated millet and sorghum, while skilled blacksmiths turned iron ore into tools, weapons, and art. Markets were the lifeblood of the kingdom, places where salt from the coast was traded for iron from the interior, and where news and culture flowed as freely as goods. This was a world of order, tradition, and self-sufficiency. It was a world that had existed for centuries, strong and proud. But on the horizon, a storm was gathering, a storm that would tear this world apart and forge a queen of fire and steel. That storm was the Atlantic slave trade. By the 16th century, Europe's appetite for wealth had become insatiable. Portugal, having established footholds along the African coast, was at the forefront of this brutal enterprise. But they weren't alone. England, France, and the Netherlands all vied for control of the lucrative trade routes. The engine driving this monstrous machine was the insatiable demand for labor from the sugar plantations of Brazil and the tobacco fields of the Caribbean. Millions of African lives were fed into this furnace, treated as commodities, not human beings. For the Kingdom of Ndongo, this wasn't an abstract horror happening far away. It was a direct and existential threat knocking at their door. The Portuguese, from their coastal fortress at Luanda, began to push inland, their goals twofold: to control the sources of silver they mistakenly believed were hidden in the interior, and to capture people to sell into slavery. This relentless pressure created chaos. It pitted neighbor against neighbor and fueled internal conflicts that the Portuguese were all too happy to exploit. The old ways of trade and diplomacy were breaking down, replaced by the brutal logic of gunpowder and chains. Ndongo was caught in the crosshairs. Its people were being stolen, its sovereignty threatened. The kingdom desperately needed a leader who could navigate this treacherous new world, someone who understood both the traditions of the Mbundu and the ruthless ambition of the Europeans. In this crucible of crisis, a young princess was watching, learning, and waiting. Her name was Nzinga, and her destiny was about to collide with the fate of her kingdom. Nzinga was born into this world of escalating crisis around 1583. She was the daughter of Ngola Kilowanji, the king of Ndongo. From her earliest days, she was different. While royal daughters were typically kept from the spheres of political and military power, Nzinga was an exception. Her father recognized a unique spark in her, a keen intelligence and an unyielding spirit. He allowed her to accompany him to political meetings, to observe negotiations with neighboring chiefs, and even to witness military drills. She learned the art of statecraft not from scrolls, but from seeing it in action. She understood the complex web of loyalties that held the kingdom together and the external threats that sought to tear it apart. Her brother, Mbande, was the heir to the throne, but he lacked her charisma and strategic mind. While he was being groomed for power, Nzinga was actively absorbing it. This early exposure was her classroom. She learned multiple languages, a skill that would later become one of her most powerful diplomatic weapons. She studied the tactics of Mbande warriors and, just as importantly, she studied the Portuguese. She learned their customs, their motivations, and their weaknesses. She saw how they used religion as a tool of control and how their greed for slaves overrode all other concerns. This was not just an academic exercise. It was preparation for the fight of her life. She was forging herself into the leader her people would desperately need. When her father died, Nzinga's brother, Mbande, took the throne. His reign was a disaster. Lacking his father's strength and his sister's cunning, Mbande was easily manipulated by the Portuguese. He pursued a policy of appeasement, hoping to satisfy the Portuguese demand for slaves by waging war on his own people and neighboring groups. This only weakened Ndongo further, causing internal dissent and emboldening the Portuguese to demand even more. The kingdom was spiraling into chaos. Seeing the destruction his policies were causing, Mbande grew increasingly paranoid and cruel. In a fit of brutal insecurity, he saw Nzinga's young son as a potential rival to his own lineage. He had the boy murdered, an act of unimaginable cruelty that would forever change Nzinga. This was the moment that grief turned to iron. The personal tragedy fused with the political crisis, hardening her resolve. She fled the royal court, seeking refuge in the nearby kingdom of Matamba. But she was not simply running away, she was regrouping. From her exile, she watched as her brother's weakness drove their kingdom to the brink of collapse. The Portuguese, sensing the perfect opportunity, intensified their campaigns, capturing thousands and seizing vast territories. Ndongo was about to be swallowed whole. It was at this lowest point that Mbande, finally realizing he was completely out of his depth, did the unthinkable. He sent a message to the sister he had so grievously wronged. He needed her. He needed the one person with the intelligence and courage to face the Portuguese. He asked Nzinga to go to Luanda as his envoy and negotiate a peace treaty. It was a mission that seemed impossible, a journey into the heart of the enemy's power. In 1622, Nzinga arrived in Luanda, the center of Portuguese power in Central Africa. Her entrance was pure political theater, designed to command respect from the very start. The Portuguese governor, João Correia de Sousa, intended to humiliate her. In the meeting room, he sat on an elevated, velvet-covered chair while providing only a floor mat for Nzinga, a gesture meant to signify her status as a supplicant. Nzinga, without missing a beat, signaled to one of her attendants. The woman knelt on all fours, creating a human throne for Nzinga to sit on, placing her at eye level with the stunned governor. The message was clear. She was his equal, not his subordinate. This single act set the tone for the entire negotiation. Nzinga was not there to beg. She was there to bargain. She spoke to the governor in his own language, Portuguese, debating complex points of international law and trade policy with a fluency that astonished him. She argued that the Portuguese wars were illegal and that Ndongo was a sovereign state. She demanded the return of captured territories and an end to slave raids. In a masterstroke of diplomacy, she offered to be baptized as a Christian, adopting the name Dona Ana de Souza. This was not a surrender of her beliefs, but a strategic move to build a political alliance, positioning herself as a Christian sister to the King of Portugal, not a conquered subject. The governor, completely outmaneuvered, agreed to her terms. Nzinga had won a stunning diplomatic victory. She left Luanda not as a defeated envoy, but as a ruler in her own right, having secured a peace treaty that promised to save her kingdom. But the peace was short-lived. The ink on the treaty was barely dry when the Portuguese governor who had negotiated with Nzinga was replaced. The demand for slaves was just too profitable. The raids continued, pushing the kingdom of Ndongo to the brink of collapse. Her brother, the Nzinga Mbande, was broken by the relentless pressure and the betrayal. He couldn't stop the Portuguese, and he couldn't protect his people. In 1624, he died. Some sources say by suicide. Others whisper that Nzinga, seeing his weakness as a fatal liability, may have had a hand in his death. With the king gone and the kingdom in chaos, Ndongo needed a leader who was not just a diplomat, but a warrior. There was only one choice. In 1624, Nzinga seized power, pushing aside her young nephew to become the ruler, the Ngolo of Ndongo. Nzinga's ascension was not universally accepted. Many Mbande nobles were scandalized by the idea of a female Ngola, but Nzinga had no time for their traditions. The Portuguese were already moving to depose her, installing a puppet king on the throne. They declared her an outlaw and sent armies to capture her. Nzinga's time for diplomacy was over. She was now a queen without a kingdom, a ruler on the run. But Nzinga was a brilliant military strategist. She retreated into the eastern hinterlands, regrouping her forces and forging new alliances. She reached out to former enemies, to runaway slaves, and to anyone who despised the Portuguese. She even formed a temporary, uneasy alliance with the Dutch, who were also fighting the Portuguese for control of the Atlantic trade routes. By 1627, she had built a powerful mobile army, perfectly adapted to guerrilla warfare in the dense forests and rocky hills of Angola. This wasn't just a rebellion. It was the beginning of a war that would last for over 30 years. Nzinga transformed herself from a princess and a diplomat into a formidable queen and commander-in-chief. She often led her troops into battle herself, dressed as a man, proving that leadership and courage had no gender. This is where her legend truly solidifies. Now in her 60s, an age when most rulers would be comfortably in their palaces, Queen Nzinga was still on the front lines. Even after, the Dutch withdrew their support, leaving Nzinga and her kingdoms of Ndongo and Matamba to face the Portuguese alone once again. The fight for her people's freedom was far from over. She orchestrated long-term resistance across the land, a constant thorn in the side of the colonial administration. Her actions didn't just win battles. They fundamentally weakened Portuguese control and drained their resources for decades. They couldn't pacify the region because Nzinga's spirit of resistance was everywhere. The Portuguese tried everything to stop her. Countless assassination plots were hatched. Numerous military campaigns were launched with the specific goal of capturing her. But Nzinga was always one step ahead. She was a master of intelligence, diplomacy, and warfare. She outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and outlasted all of her enemies. She was never captured, never defeated, never broken. After a lifetime of struggle, a lifetime of fighting for the sovereignty of her people, Queen Nzinga died peacefully in her sleep on December 17, 1663. She was in her 80s. She died a free woman in her own land, unconquered to the very end. Her influence echoed all the way into the 20th century, becoming a powerful symbol during Angola's long and arduous fight for independence, which was finally achieved in 1975. Today, when we talk about Queen Nzinga, we're not just remembering a historical monarch. We are remembering a woman who refused to kneel before an empire. We remember Queen Nzinga Mbande, and we honor her legacy today. Thanks for watching, and if you found this story as inspiring as I do, make sure to like and subscribe for more.